So. Welcome once again to another property podcast. This, interestingly enough, hits the space normally occupied by Property Matters, and we alternate it every so often. I would say it's not that regular, but we do have it, and this one's called Construction Matters, of course, with Hamish McClay of Search Bay, our esteemed Lord and Master who set this up in the first place, and today's special guest is Frank O'Donnell, the surface water guy. What he doesn't know about surface water is not worth knowing. And we will be talking more to him shortly. But to start us off, as is per normal, Hamish McClay.
I guess it's got to be rather typical. But good afternoon to you all. Great to have you as an audience yet again. We're particularly fortunate today. We haven't had Frank before on any of our podcasts. Not because we didn't want to have him on here, but it takes time to do this. And it's so very, very typical, particularly around here. We'll speak on a day where there is no, or appears to be no surface water, because the rains have come down. And it's quite interesting, just before we came on air, one of the things we were speaking to Frank about, he said, well, the thing is, of course, he said, when it's raining, everybody sees it's wet. Once the rain stops, the water disappears.
Well, of course.
Problems don't, though.
Well, interesting enough, we call that object impermanence in ADHD world. Yeah, because you can't see it, it no longer exists.
Oh, right. Well, but it very much does so. So I pass over to Frank to tell us something about what's going on. And one of the other things is, I always remember this from years ago, being told that, it's the wrong sort of rain. And you think, well, yes. The thing is wet stuff coming down. What sort of rain does it need to be? But I mean, all that happens because everything's changing. The climate is changing. And I'm sure within that, the groundwater, the dynamics of which we speak with Frank about, a lot of it will be revealed, but not sufficient to enable us to not bring Frank back again. But let us get things going with Frank anyway.
Frank, welcome to the show. Interesting enough, I live in the middle of nowhere, and there's a big field near us, which Anglian Water have been digging up to put in these huge stormwater drain type affair underneath it to reduce all the surface water flooding. They put it in after a year, and they still got surface water flooding. But anyway, moving swiftly on, what can you tell us? And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, delighted to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, surface water is a real passion of mine, and it has been for the last sort of 12, 14 years. We believe that there's a lot of room in the market for changes. We have to take this problem with surface water head on. We have a situation where not only around the world, but even in the UK, over the next couple of months, we will see it, where we will have a water shortage. There'll be a hosepipe ban. Because we don't have enough water. And yet what we're doing in terms of replenishing the water table, we're sending billions of litres of water into the ocean, where it becomes contaminated and it's no use to man nor beast. And yet that seems to be the norm, which is ridiculous in my mind. Whenever, we have a solution whereby we put the water back into the ground and let gravity and Mother Nature and the Earth's natural soil take care of it. And to me, it just makes so much sense, and I don't understand the mentality of sending water to the ocean.
So apparently, we all get very worried about surface water when it's tipping it down, but the moment it all dries up, we all forget about it. Is that what happens?
Yeah. It's actually quite an interesting one because, if you think about our bodies, in the middle of winter, our bodies, we tend to get cozy and pull ourselves in. And when the sun comes out, the shoulders open up and we get quite blasé about it. And that's what's happening in the ground. That expansion and contraction in the winter and the summer is exactly the same. And that's what helps our system, that expansion and contraction of the ground. And you can see it when over the next couple of months, if you watch the ground, you'll see a lot of it cracking, a lot of cracks when it's the water disappearing. And that's what helps, what makes our system work.
So tell me a little bit more in depth about how your system manifests.
Yeah, well, in my mind, drainage is very, very simple. Let's say, for argument's sake, I had a problem with Hamish, and I moved him 500 yards away. I stick him in a pipe, shoot him 500 yards away. I've moved the problem. I haven't solved it. I've just moved Hamish 500 yards away. And that's drainage. That's all it is. You're just moving the problem from one place to somewhere else. On a golf course, we call that just chasing puddles. You're just moving it somewhere to go somewhere else. Basically, what we're talking about doing is drilling into the ground, going down to maybe 12 to 15 meters into the ground, into dry, unsaturated ground, which takes the water away, and let gravity, Mother Nature, and the earth soils take care of it. And that's what we do. We create additional capacity. That's what we do. And that's everything.
What happens if the water table is really high? You haven't got very far that you can push the water.
The water table is obviously something we have to contend with. To meet all the regulations, we have to curtail any drilling that we do to at least a meter above the water table.
Right.
So that's all taken into consideration. I'm based in Scotland, so everything we do is all been rubber stamped by SEPA and Scottish Water, and so we install it based on the rules and regulations that they stipulate.
So, give me a typical use case.
Typical use case, it could be a football field, rugby field, cricket ground, golf course. Any of the recreational areas that could be used there. Alternatively, they could be used on building sites. So if you got, the big favourite for me is retention ponds. If all around the country we have retention ponds, and I'm thinking, why do we need retention ponds? From my point of view, for a builder to go out there and buy land, let's say he bought 100 acres of land, the first thing he's going to do is go and, that 100 acres of land, Mother Nature has taken care of that for time immemorial. So water lands on that, Mother Nature takes care of it. The earth is getting wet, the worms are getting fed, and the ground's constantly moving. And then all of a sudden, we have a builder comes along, sticks so many houses on this particular site. He takes all the surface water to one corner of the site, depriving all that ground, depriving the worms of all the water they need, and they take it all to one side. And all they're doing there is storing it, and then they're going to ship it out to a local stream. And builders are notoriously finding a little stream that appeared on a map 150 years ago, and we'll use that as an outlet. Honestly, you couldn't write a book about it. Or you could write a book about it.
All right. So at the moment, what is the alternative to what you do?
The alternative we are doing is just move it somewhere else.
Right.
As I said earlier in my earlier example, but I'm talking about Hamish, just move it somewhere else. That's
right. So it's just shunting it from place to place. It's not actually solving the problem. And what you're saying is by drilling down and making sure that you filter it out above a meter above the water table, you are in fact going to take care of the problem rather than shunting it off into a stream somewhere.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. That's all about.
Hamish, this seems to be a problem that's going to increase, not decrease at the moment, given that we have climate change as we have done.
Well, as Frank has explained to me in conversations in the past over time, we have the type of rainfall that we have. We have, like, as we've sort of spoken about, there are some places in the UK, they haven't had a day without rain since the start of the year.
Right.
And here we are in the third month, and there's all that particular sort of rainfall. And we've got to reach a point where the rain's going to stop. And as Frank said, the things are going to change. And it just worries me that you've got all this wondrous water sort of coming out of the skies, and somehow or other, instead of actually keeping it where we actually sort of need it, because surely over time, what's going to happen if you let those cracks appear? This is when it destabilizes the buildings that are above it. All that water's going away to as a retention pond, whatever one chooses to actually sort of call it. That is going to find its way into our water supply somewhere around the ground. But from my understanding of what Frank's solution actually is, you take that development. First of all, his solution is going to be cheaper than the one they're using. You take a retention pond. How many houses, if you didn't have a retention pond in the corner there, how many more houses could you build? So basically the developer, he actually is able to get more buildings in there, but because of the water is going down, and we're speaking about surface water here, it's a particular type of water, it is just working through its natural course has happened for thousands of years. The water is down there where it belongs, because this is one of the big challenges. Us humans intervene with nature so badly that we actually pretty well destroy nature. I mean, I was getting a little bit concerned there when Frank was speaking about those poor worms being deprived. Whereas looking at Frank's system, the way the water is actually sort of going down, it's beneath the properties. It's not destabilizing them because it was there before the houses got there. The ground is staying stable. By building on it, we destabilize it, which is why sometimes all looks very well for the first couple of years. Then after a couple of years, things start changing as the ground itself sort of dries out, the water's taken away. So there's an awful lot to be said for. I'm a great nature lover, as many of you will know who've watched it. So the more of nature that we can retain, the more effective it is. But the other thing is, what happens to that water? At the moment, all sorts of things happen to it. First, and then we get rid of it and throw it into the ocean. So it's no good to man the beast, really, because of the way it sort of goes. Well, it will actually eventually come back to us, but it takes a long time. Whereas the way of the world, if we're actually able to retain that water below those properties, I don't know, maybe Frank can tell us. Frank, are we going to get the same level of drying out of those properties above because of the system that you're actually sort of operating and you were putting in?
Yeah, not at all. It's not no way will it dry out. What it actually does, it equalizes the moisture throughout the ground, because in the dry, when it's really warm, the water will be pulled back up again, up through back towards the surface. So it equalizes the moisture content throughout the ground. So we're not drying it out. No, not at all. That was initial thoughts of one or two people, but over the years, we've now been doing it since 2012. We've got over 600 installations across the UK, and that doesn't seem to be a problem, Hamish. It's not a problem.
But it's one of the benefits I thought would actually be a sort of great one to us. And the other thing is, we think about, we're speaking about developments. Of course, that's really what we're speaking about within construction. But one of the challenges we actually sort of find within construction, people are used to doing things a certain way. People are used to those sort of retention ponds. So that they will actually do, the architect will join all the rest of it. What about the pipework? Pipework becomes more complicated. However, if there were better, first of all, more efficient ways of doing it, which Frank's system strikes me as being absolutely superb for that, but less expensive, does it not reduce the cost of construction because of this particular aspect isn't as worrisome?
Yeah. Let me give you an example there. I got an inquiry in December for a house builder who will remain nameless, and they take all the water to a retention pond. The retention pond is overflowing. They've created another retention pond because they've got a problem. All of a sudden, they've got a problem with their outlet, right? Now, the farmer said, well, you can buy my field next door to your site for 500,000. So to solve their problem, they're talking 500,000 because they've taken all that problem to the one area. Now, let's say we were having to deal with, say, 50,000 cubic meters of water here. Well, if we just spread that all over the site, then, and we had a problem with one area, we could have identified that one problem area and we could have solved that one problem area, not for £500,000. So by taking that and spreading it over the whole site, where we can use car parking areas, we can use recreational areas, we can use people's gardens, we can use people's driveway. There's absolutely no need to take all that water to one corner of a site. It just, in my mind, it doesn't make sense. When we think about the big thing nowadays is the carbon footprint of the job. Using our system, we are drastically reducing the carbon footprint on the job, and it's much more economical. It makes so much more sense. So economical, especially if you can build another, say, 10 houses at 200,000. That's giving you what, 2 million, and we're going to put a system in there for maybe 300,000 or 400,000, and so you're up by 1.6 million, and less risk, reduced carbon footprint.
So lower risk and lower carbon footprint. These are both good news.
Yeah,
Hamish,
it's not that we're not sticking our hand in the air going, yeah, that sounded right. Yeah, this is the design. We're actually we are test drilling the ground. We're producing an engineered solution, all backed by PI insurance, and in effect, we're taking the risk. And when you say we're taking the risk, well, as far as we're concerned, there's no risk because it's an engineered solution. It's based on the ground conditions in situ. So
it's a solution based on science and covered by insurance. Excellent.
Yeah. It's engineered and it's backed by PI insurance. We've got 2 million. If it's a bigger site and they want more, then we'll get more. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Frank, to giving us, dare I say it, dipping our toe in the water of the topic of surface water. Forgive my puns. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well, I mean, thanks indeed. It's so informative speaking to experts like Frank, who can contribute quite significantly, not only to the footprint that we're making because people say, oh, crikey, all these houses, what about the carbon footprint? When you look at what can be achieved through using something like Frank's system, we are not disturbing the whole of that ground, because by taking it all away, I mean, I like the idea of transporting me 500 yards. That's good. But,
I was going to say, I'm not sure. I like the vision of seeing Hamish be shunted up a pipe. But anyway, moving up.
But the fact that we can distribute that and it benefits the ground beneath, we're not going to see the conventional cracking problems in the way that we have. But it's all engineered. I do have some work. I did do some work in engineering. And one of my tasks was to actually engineer problems out or to reduce cost by finding engineering solutions.
Right.
So it's a tremendous thing to be able to do. And it is great. I just love new ideas like this coming in. And all you've got to do, if any of you actually happen to like Formula One and you want to go look at what happens at Silverstone, if it wasn't for the like of what Frank was doing at places like that and on football grounds all over the place as well, those places would be very, 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 very sort of overwhelmed with the amount of water that there was on the surface.
Yeah, I can see that.
All that surface water.
And let's give thanks to the fact that you're helping keep all those worms alive, Frank.
Yeah. But that was interesting what Hamish said there about football parks, because generally speaking, when games get postponed and they say it's a waterlogged pitch, then generally speaking, what they're talking about is a section of the park is waterlogged. Generally speaking, it's not the whole pitch. There's a problem area. And with our system, we can go in and we can do that small area. It could be the penalty area, for instance, that's causing the problem. Then we'll go in. We don't have to do the full pitch. We'll just do the penalty area. You with
So
me?
it can be done. It can be done piecemeal. Thank you once again, Frank. Excellent, useful information. I'm hoping that everybody here. I saw a whole influx of people, to new people to this channel. We talk about in this particular channel all things construction. Other weeks you may find we just talk about more generalist property issues. Don't forget that tomorrow we've got Ipso Kind of Magic, the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents, of which Hamish is currently a chairman, and that we talk about Ipso related issues, search related issues, and hopefully stuff that will strike a chord with you. Interesting enough, we get more and more people who aren't Ipso members watching that, so that's great news. And on Thursday we have one of my favorite podcasts, which is Property Quorum, where we knock around with various members who are other specialists. Always good to have specialists around us, as I'm sure Frank and Hamish would agree. And we just generally talk about particular issues of the day that are affecting people within the property marketplace. And on Friday, the one that seems to have got the most interest whatsoever is Cladding Matters, which talks about all sorts of things to do with not just cladding, but building safety in the whole. So do try those podcasts out. I think you may find them informative. So tomorrow is at 10, on 1, on Thursday is at 10, and on Friday is back at 1 again. So do check them out. And until tomorrow, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please, in these troubled times, look after your mental health. Until then, bye-bye.